Born Primitive Outdoor is proud to partner with Montana Knife Company, Marsupial Gear, Evolution Outdoors, Sheep Feet, and Capture Gear. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to our sponsors. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Outdoor podcast. I have a truly, I say sometimes special guest, but this is no bullshit. I followed this guy for a long time, look up to him. Dave Canterbury with, I guess it's the Pathfinder Survival School. Is that correct, Dave?
That's close enough. Pathfinder School worldwide.
There we go. Yeah, man, I don't, this sounds horrible for people I've had on. Mostly it's buddies or whatever else, but what you do and what you offer and your knowledge is something I definitely, push people to and everything else. So I can't thank you enough for hopping on. I know you're busy.
Oh, no problem, buddy. I'm honored to be here, man. I mean, I follow you, I follow what you do, and have a great respect for what you do. So I'm honored to be here, man.
Heck yeah. Well, for those who don't, a lot of my followers don't get into the primitive stuff as much. If you could, introduce yourself and then let everybody where they can find you and kind of what you offer, and then we'll start shooting the shit.
Okay. So my name is Dave Canterbury. Obviously, I own the Pathfinder School worldwide in Southeast Ohio. We teach several different types of survival classes, as well as things like navigation intensive, basic navigation training, wilderness first aid, ropes and rigging, as well as medicinal edible plants, and a few other things that you can check out on our website. And the website self-relianceoutfitters.com. I'm also an outfitter, so I do have gear that I sell that's branded Pathfinder, as well as other people's branded gear. I'm a 2-time New York Times bestseller. My book, Bushcraft 101, has been number 1 on Amazon for almost 11 years straight now. And I have 5 or 6 other books, and I'm getting ready to contract for a book on navigation exclusively here in the next month or so. So pretty much that's me in a nutshell. If you're looking for me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, just about anywhere you type in Dave Canterbury or Pathfinder Survival, or Pathfinder School, you're going to find it.
Gotcha. So what got you into the primitive living, survival, bushcrafting? Was that probably like me as a kid, you were shooting shit probably you shouldn't be with a BB gun, but what got you into it?
Yeah, I did all that stuff when I was a kid, and I trapped and I hunted and I hunted mushrooms and all that kind of crap that normal, kids do that live in rural areas. But honestly, after I got out of the military, I started doing 18th century reenacting. And that's really what got me heavily involved in this stuff, was practicing those primitive skills. I say primitive by 18th century, not primitive standards by caveman standards, but primitive by 18th century standards, where you have, very few accoutrements and gear, a firearm, and you are trekking through the woods in that period gear. So you're wearing shoe pack, moccasins, loincloth, leggings, hunting shirt, some type of a wool blanket around you for a shroud. You've got an oilcloth tarp most likely, and flint and steel is your mainstay of making fire. And then you're carrying, foods that you can quickly cook, or harvesting game off the landscape at every opportunity. And that kind of got me into this whole thing. And then I started to make some videos as I got into primitive archery more. I started making some videos on YouTube, and it's that's where kind of everything started, with people asking me, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? I would make a video on a certain shelter or a certain way of doing things, and they would say, well, what if I need to do this? What if I need to do that? And I would spur another video or another video. And when I first started on YouTube in late 2007, it was when YouTube actually first started. And there was only probably 6 or 7 guys on all of YouTube doing survival stuff. Now there's, millions of people doing survival stuff. So it's a whole different ball game now than it was. And I really got in kind of on the ground floor of it all. And I'm really very thankful for that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I, not to shit on YouTube right out of the gate, but there is some really good pages on YouTube, and there's also some really bad pages, unfortunately, and that's just the way of life. But with what you teach on YouTube, you also offer, which I actually sent, which is actually now my ex-wife, which I'm cool with her. I sent my Amy to one of your courses. Everything you teach on YouTube, you actually offer courses for that, and that's in Ohio.
That's correct. Even in the blacksmithing, we just had a blacksmithing class last week. in 0-degree weather. We had a blacksmithing class outdoors. So yeah, everything that we teach on YouTube, we definitely teach at the school, and vice versa. I try to give everybody that knowledge for free. If they can't afford to come learn it one-on-one, I try to give it to them for free on YouTube.
Yeah, and one of my buddies, Kurt Gamashay, he's actually been through your course through the military side of things, as well. And you kind of, I guess you could say, tier those. You have pretty basic courses, and then you have pretty dang advanced courses. So let everybody know how that works, especially like you're in Ohio. We offer stuff back, but we're out west. What do you explain kind of the levels of what they're going to learn, how much of their ass they're going to get kicked, with what you offer down there?
I mean, it depends on the class you choose, obviously. If you choose some of our peripheral classes like a Bushcraft 101 or ropes and rigging or medicinal edible plants or blacksmithing, those are pretty rudimentary, relaxed classroom environment, field exercise at a slow pace, easy learning classes. Obviously, you have to do some work, you have to build some things, make some things, those type deals, but it's not intense. Now, you get into our survival series courses, whether it is something simple like the basic survival or something as high as advanced survival, on the water's edge, 21st century lawn hunter, the Everglades camp, things like that. Those things are quite a bit more intense. And depending on the time of year that you take those courses, really kind of depends on the shit level, if you will. It's pretty much like out there in Wyoming. I'm sure most people would rather be out there in April, May than they would in January, February.
Yeah, even for us, probably more like June, July. It's still pretty freaking bad in April. But with with kind of put this into perspective. From what I have seen, and I would get get your feedback on this. A lot of people, men and women both, that are outdoorsmen or women, I think at times maybe have a false sense of security of what they think they know, and then when you ask them about reading a compass, train association, knot tying, fire building, you find out really quickly that, I don't know, I would say 90% of the people that go outdoors are ill-equipped. I
would say there's no question about that. I agree.
And so when you look at ill-equipped, the first thing I would say is, on my end is, okay, can you read a 4, 6, or 8-digit grid coordinate? Can you, do a terrain analysis? Do you know how to read a compass, shoot an azimuth? And then knot tying, those, and fire building, those are the big ones I first kind of approach people, because a lot of people like to spend a lot of money on gear. And gear will not save your life. What is in your brain will save your life.
Basic necessity level shelter building to some extent, especially a ground shelter.
And on that,
something that
I was going to say, dive into. No, go ahead. I was going to say, dive into that.
I'm just, I think the biggest mistake people make is we tend to, and even though you're absolutely right. 90% of the people that come to my courses, even if they say, I've been a woodsman all my life, struggle to start fire a lot of times. And unfortunately, and I don't want to bash YouTube either, because I make a good living from YouTube a lot of times, but unfortunately, I think in the survival genre, we have romanticized fire to the point where everyone thinks that's the most important skill to understand. And truly speaking, if you were sheltering from weather, fire is probably the last thing on the list. The first thing would be insulating yourself from the ground. The second thing would be trapping body core temperature. The next, from the surroundings. The next one would be protecting yourself from wind and rain. And the last one would be making fire.
No, and that's good. It's good that I have you on here to discuss this, because I focus pretty heavily on fire because I probably take for granted the other things. And I was teaching a course recently with my buddy Kurt, and where we're at, under specific trees and things, you get basic 6, 8, 12 inches of the pine cones that have been broken down by pine squirrels. And as a joke, I looked at it and I said something. I'm like, you know what that is, everyone? That is a very comfortable night's sleep. You have insulation, right. You have the loft, right? You have the but I take that for granted. So I if you don't mind, dive into that a little more. Talk about the insulation factor, as far as, the weather and fire being the last thing you want to worry about. I mean, talk about that.
Well, I mean, I think everything's situational, obviously, right? I mean, fire's not always going to be your last priority. It could be your first priority. If you're soaking wet and you have no way to get dry and you have a chance very quickly of becoming hypothermic, then fire is going to be something that can rapidly raise your body's core temperature and dry your clothes out. No question about that. But if you're just talking about shelter in general, survival priorities, I'm lost, I'm stranded, I'm not hurt, I'm not wet, but I need to build a shelter for the night to survive freezing temperatures, then insulation and loft become the number one goal over everything else, because it doesn't matter if you build the biggest fire on the planet. If you lay directly on the ground, you're still going to lose a ton of body heat from the ground because it's never ending heat suck. I mean, it's a heat sink, period. And if you don't have an R value of insulation and loft between you and that ground, you're continually going to lose body heat no matter how warm you are from the outside because of radiant heat of the fire if you're in direct contact with the ground. So, yeah, you could stand up beside a tree probably and around a fire all night and just, shake and shiver and turn around and get your back warm and then turn around and get your belly warm and things like that. But if you really want to get a good night's sleep, which should be the first thing any outdoorsman thinks about, should be, what am I going to do to get a good night's sleep, period. Then ground insulation is the key. And when you're talking about weather, in freezing temperatures like you're talking about in Wyoming this time of year, you better have something that's going to give you an R value of between 5 and 7 at a minimum. And that's not going to be, your accordion pad from REI. That's 1.9 R value. That is terrible insulation this time of year. That's like summer insulation. And so, like you said, you can build insulation in the loft through debris, but you have to build it pretty thick, because what you're talking about is natural debris, pine being the best, by coincidence, that you talked about pine. 1 inch of pine straw, R value is about 1.2 per inch. And obviously R value is cumulative, so you can add that. So if you got 4 inches of pine straw.
Dave, I want to interrupt you real quick to make sure that my crew of people are understanding. So guys and gals, when you've listened to anything I've talked about on the air pads, and I talk about it needs to have a high R value. When you have a 3-season pad, you're looking at 1.8 to 3.5. When you're looking at a 4-season pad, you're getting into that 5 plus R value, and you could just, it's the relative effectiveness of what will keep you warm, I guess, and I could probably explain that better. So what Dave's talking about is not an air pad, but basically using what nature provides to give you the same R value of what an air pad might give you. Go ahead, Dave.
Right, and obviously you're not going to get that R value from an air pad without some type of loft inside it, like down.
Yep, thin layer of down or something like that inside.
Something inside the pad itself. The dead air space is not enough. You have to have an insulated pad to get those kind of R values.
Right.
Like something like what's the name of that brand now? Exped.
Thermarest, Exped. They have like
Thermarest, Exped. Something that's got they call it an insulated pad, which means they either have some kind of insulation inside of it or down that adds to what I would call density. There's really 2 ways you can avoid conduction. One of them is density, one of them is loft. And really, density is the worst case scenario. Loft is what you want. And like we said with the pine, 1.2 R value per inch. So if you got 4 inches of pine straw underneath you, then you're pretty well off. The problem you have to think about with all of that stuff is you're still compressing that insulation. Now with pine cones, that's more difficult. It's more difficult for your body weight spread out over, 15 square feet that your body takes up on the ground. It's more difficult to compress pine cones. But something like pine straw or leaves or just debris or pine boughs compress greatly when you lay on them. So if you don't have something 4 to 5 inches thick compressed, then you don't have enough. And I think that's part of what a lot of people don't understand too, is they want to put 4 inches of leaves underneath something, a blanket or something like that, and lay on top of it. They say, I got 4 inches of leaves. Well, you did before you laid on it. Now you got a half inch.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's the same with if you are too big for your sleeping bag and you're compressing the down, that you have all that loft and then you compress it. It's not worth a shit. And with backpack hunters specifically, which is the crew I kind of follow along with, very rarely do they get stuck out overnight. But generally, if they do, it does become a higher level of crisis because of the skills they're lacking that we're talking about. And I would say if you know what you're doing, if you get stuck away from camp, it's generally somewhat of a mildly uncomfortable overnight stay. It's not that big of a deal. And you go over all of this, I talk about all the time what I have in my pack, a garbage bag. But as we're diving around here, talk about kind of the Cs. I think you're known, for that pretty well. And when I say the Cs, like, I don't want to say that you've coined that phrase, but I've only heard of that coming out of your mouth and kind of being known for that. Talk about
because I'm the one that created it.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone really. I don't want to say you stole that. I mean, people talk shit all the time, but talk about that a little bit, because your night that you spend away from camp, how comfortable that is really depends on what you have on you and your knowledge base. But go ahead.
It absolutely does. I agree with that. And to what you said, you're exactly right. There's a huge difference between survival and inconvenient camping. And so if your skill level is there and your equipment is there, then you're inconveniently camping. If you have jack in your pack and you have no skills, now it's survival mode. And that's the mindset you've got to get yourself straightened out from, is that oh shit moment. You've got to make sure that you have one or the other or both. If I don't have this great skill level, then I better have gear to make up for it. If I have great skill, then I can have less gear. The more you know, the less you carry type thing. But people take that to extremes too, because the more you know, the less you carry doesn't mean I walk out in the woods with a knife. It means that I know enough to carry multifunctional gear, and that gear will serve me in several ways that all directly affect my survival, but I don't have to add 50 pounds of it to get the job done. And so the Cs, that's kind of, the mainstream of building a kit for the wilderness came with what was called the 10 Essentials from the Sierra Club back in the early 1900s. And the reason I didn't quite agree with the 10 Essential theme and why I created the 10 Cs to begin with was because part of the 10 Essentials was like plastic bottles of water. It didn't specify a metal container that you could put into a fire and boil water to disinfect it if you had to, or use for an irrigation device, or use for a warming device inside your shelter, or use for a hot pack or a cold pack. None of that stuff was ever specified. So what I tried to do with the 5 Cs to begin with, which led into the 10 Cs later, but the 5 Cs were based on several things. And I wanted to come up, I was in the military too. I was military police, and everybody in the military has acronyms on the brain, right? Or simple lists that they can learn things from, because that's the way they teach in the military. They want you to learn on a simple level so you don't forget. And so I wanted to come up with some type of a list that people wouldn't forget. So I figured out how to put these 5 items I wanted in categories of Cs. Right. So it is cutting tool or cutting tools. It's never one, it's multiple. Cutting tools, cover elements, combustion devices, containers, and cordage. So by having those 5 things and multiples of those 5 things, number one, all of those things in one way, shape, or form directly affect my ability to control my body's core temperature. Number two, all 5 of those things are the most difficult things to recreate off the landscape. They take the most time to recreate off the landscape, and most of them take a specialized material to create off the landscape, which means you're probably not going to have it, not in the time an emergency happens. So that's where the 5 Cs came in. Here's a list of categories that's no different than what you have in your own home. Right? You open the drawer, it's full of cutting tools. You open a cabinet, it's full of containers. You go in your bedroom, your roof of your house, it's all covered. You have containers everywhere. You have cords everywhere. You have combustion devices. Every time you turn a light switch on, electricity pops. Every time you turn the gas stove on, you light it. You have combustion. So it's nothing you don't live with every single day. It's just making that into a backpack, and now that backpack becomes your house. And so these categories were put together so that people had the basics that they needed, along with basic levels of skill, to protect their body's core temperature and be able to survive 1 or 2 nights, depending on how imminent rescue was. And obviously, I'm sure you tell people all the time, only a fool goes out into the wilderness without a PLB nowadays. Only a fool goes out without leaving a game plan. Only a fool goes out without something to recharge their phone if something happens to it. So you have these primary, secondary, tertiary devices for communicating, which basically is signaling of some sort, so that if you do run into an emergency, you hit the button. But in the meantime, before you get rescued, you've got to survive. And these things are the things that will allow you to do that without adding a bunch of fluff to your backpack.
No, and that's 100% true. And I to elaborate or make sure people understand the 5 C's, which I have talked a lot of shit over the past 30 years about the 10 essentials. And I've gotten a little flack for that, but from my experience in the wilderness, some of it was kind of a crock, so I agree with Dave 100%. So when you look at the 5 C's that Dave's talking about, those are things that should be on your person and on your body at all times, as you said. But also, I want to dive into this a little deeper, having a high level of experience and practice with each one of those. So I'm gonna dive into each one of those. So the cutting tool. So most people that on my side of the fence look at a cutting tool to process an animal. That's just, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not talking shit about that. But let's dive into that a little bit farther because like me, I don't bring a big knife when I backpack on it. It's too heavy, right? But one of the things that I do want that knife to be able to do is not necessarily baton, right? I'm not going to be, if I have to start batoning wood, shit has gone way downhill on a backpack hunt for me.
I would agree with that 100%.
But getting a fire going, being able to take like what's around me, grabbing different things as far as like, preparing for my next fire. The cutting tool, you should not be just proficient in not cutting yourself using the cutting tool. I would say keeping the cutting tool sharp, knowing what to use the cutting tool for and when, meaning when to pry, what you can't pry, what edge it has to sharpen it. And I'm going to stop talking, let you take it from there. Dive into the cutting tool a little bit more.
No, I think you're absolutely right about all of that. And what I would say to that, and I don't know how you teach or what you teach, because obviously I haven't been around your class or anything. But in my mind, 90% of what it takes for fire starting, probably 99.99%, of what it takes for fire starting, or what it takes for anything that you'd use a knife for, other than some type of a self-aid device or processing game, like you said, can be done with a saw.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, again, when you're backpack hunting, to add context to this, no one is bringing a saw backpack hunting. Very few people. It's too heavy. It's not needed for what we are doing when we're backpack hunting. But I want you to talk about the saw more, because also I think people overlook the saw, and you can get you offer them on your website, some pretty damn lightweight saws. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a saw, and not necessarily from my website. You can get silky saw from my website, but there's other companies that make titanium frames for silky saw blades. So you can drop that silky saw down to next to no weight in your backpack. And the advantage that saw has over a knife is, number one, you always keep that knife as your emergency tool. If you have to cut something, you're always going to have that knife. But that saw can limb, it can buck, it can strike a ferro rod, it can be used for a flint and steel in an emergency. The learning curve is much less than an axe. The danger is much less than an axe. The bulk and weight is much less than an axe. The learning curve is way less than an axe. And you also have a device at that point that you can use in lieu of that pocket knife to retain the edge on that knife for the important things. I think that's where people start messing up with knives, when they start whittling sticks and taking the time to make feather sticks with their knife and blade and all that kind of stuff, when most of that stuff can be done with the spine of a saw very, very easily if you buy the right saw, and you never have to touch it with your knife.
And which, I know you mentioned Silky, I mentioned that. Which saw do you suggest in general for most people if they're looking at?
So I would say, especially for your guys, right? For the guys that you're dealing with. I mean, you can get some lightweight folding buck saws, right? I'm not talking about the Gallo Canyons are pretty heavy. The Spring Creeks are fairly light because they're designed after the Bob Duster. It's very light. Or you can get wood. But I think a folding saw is where you really want to go, especially for your ultralight backpacker that's doing the hunting as well, because he's already carrying optics, he's already carrying a firearm, he's already carrying ammunition, he's already carrying all that other stuff with him. Is very much like a soldier. The reason they carry them teeny tiny survival kits in their vest on is because they're carrying some other shit. They don't have room to carry a bunch of crap. And I think it's the same way with your guys. If you're out there hunting and you're carrying everything you need to go out and effectively hunt game and camp overnight, you don't have any room for fluff. But a saw, in my opinion, is never fluff, because it will build shelter. It will make fires. It can start fires. It can process material for fire. Obviously, it can process any poles you need for shelters or emergency things like splints or gurneys. Anything like that can be done with a saw very, very easily that you're not going to do with a single-bladed pocket knife. Or even a double-bladed pocket knife, for that matter.
And that's where it kind of, adding context to this, when your school's my school, whatever, is, okay, if you're heading into, the wilderness, you've got 12-day hunt, 7-day hunt, you've got 45 to 70 pounds of shit on your back, right? You really got to, one, there's a finite amount of people that do that, but you really have to start whittling down what's most important. And for backpack hunters, the saw goes first, because the chances of them needing to actually use that saw for what they're doing for that specific task isn't that high, right? Like, something has gone down, they bring their own tent, right? They're probably not going to be building a fire very often, but
right. I'm a big advocate of sleeping without fire. I teach it at every survival class because I think that's very overrated.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I have Raynaud's and I'm a huge proponent of fire. But I will also say, when you build a fire to sleep by and expect you to keep you warm, what will happen, and I've done it many times, is you'll be warm for 30 minutes, you'll fall asleep, you'll wake up freezing ass cold, and then you throw some sticks on the fire, and then you fall asleep again. You can get by with that. But if you have better preparation, which Dave talked about ahead of time, really the fire is more important when you wake up to build a fire and just stand by the damn thing and be happy, right? It's happy hour, right? Because it's not going to keep you warm overnight.
Fire is a necessity thing, right?
Yeah.
Fire is something. It's comfort in the morning. I want to make some coffee. I want to sit down and get warm, talk to my buddies about the elk I saw yesterday, whatever the case may be. But in reality, the fire is a tool in an emergency. It will keep me warm. It will disinfect my water. It can signal for rescue. It can disinfect medical tools and things like that I may use on my body. It can do lots of things for me. I can use the ash. I can use the charcoal in emergency. There's lots of things I can do with it. But again, all of that's emergency. For guys like you and guys like me, 95% of the time, fire is an afterthought for, okay, I need to make some coffee and I want to cook some meat over the fire, something like that. It's not something that if I don't have it, I'm going to die without it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I build a fire a lot throughout the course of the day on backpack hunts when it's freezing cold. I like fire. And when I say I like fire, to warm my hands up. It's like television. But if you asked me what's going to keep me alive overnight, it is not fire. And if it does keep you alive overnight, you will be one tired motherfucker the next day because you have stayed awake.
Absolutely.
Keeping it going.
You can feed that bastard all night.
Yeah.
Just having enough wood to burn it all night is critical. I mean, that's one of the lessons that we teach at the school. I especially in colder months, we had a class 2 weeks ago, a basic class, and I think it got down to like 15 degrees one night, which isn't deathly cold, but there's a lot of humidity here, so it makes it feel colder than it really is. And I said, okay, guys, you're going to have a long fire all night because you're sleeping with nothing but a tarp and a wool blanket and a bed of leaves. So you're going to have a long fire all night to really keep you warm, to reflect heat off that shelter into your core. So start collecting wood. Nope, that's not enough. Nope, that's not enough. Nope, that's not enough. And 2 hours later, there's a half a truckload of wood sitting there. Okay, that might get you through the night. And by the next morning, there's sticks, and I mean twigs, and nothing left. So if you think you're going to build a fire that's going to keep you warm all night long, you better plan to burn some calories while you're doing it.
No, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because I don't want what I've talked about before taken out of context, because I'm a huge proponent of building a fire, but not to stay overnight. I want you to know how to build a fire to cook things. I want you to know how to build a fire. If it's a rewarming drill, you fall through the ice and then you need to build, those are important. I can tell you firsthand, and I do classes on this, is get your bedding figured out, everything we talked about, like, quickly. And then I do put a massive pile of wood beside me and get a fire going. But like I said, if you've done your job correctly, you're going to have that to heat you up when you first fall asleep. And if you've done everything right, you shouldn't wake back up from being cold. That was just to help you out to get to sleep. If you have to keep feeding it overnight, you're kind of fucked, and you're going to be pretty damn tired the next day.
Yeah, I would agree 100% that fire is an awesome thing to have, and I love them. I love fires myself, no question about it. And I'll build one just for the hell of building a fire, just to watch it, just like we said. And everybody needs to learn to build fires. No question about that. That should be one of your number one assets in your skill toolbox. Should be, how do I build a fire at the drop of a hat? And once you get to that point, and you can practice it, then it becomes, hey, I just want a fire to warm up for a minute. Hey, I just want a fire to cook my coffee in the morning. It's not, oh, shit, I got to have a fire. What the hell do I do now?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I'm going to move on, but I'm glad we touched on that. Because, again, sometimes people, when they hear things, they kind of hear maybe what they want. So I'm glad we had some context to that. So that the next one is a combustion device. And I promote your little, I call them fire biscuits, but like, for me,
the
mini infernos, and I make them at my house too, but not many people are going to want to do that shit. But
yeah, that's the only reason I make them. I mean, I would tell somebody how to make them tomorrow, but most people don't want to do it.
No, it's you'll probably piss your wife off or girlfriend if you do. But with a combustion device, when I talk about those, for me, I kind of add, I generally carry like a small 1/8" 3/16 ferro rod. I have waterproof matches. I have a Bic lighter, and then I have either your mini infernos, trioxane. But I want you to talk about that portion of the Cs real quick.
So you're talking about
combustion,
guaranteed fire stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's what you're talking about.
And I want everybody to know, Dave's schools are going to go much farther into depth on fire building and primitive fire building, depending on what class you go to. But for my crew and your crew both, talk about the combustion side of things.
Okay, so generally what I tell people is, and I carry matches myself, so don't take what I tell you, what I say, the wrong way, because I've got a match safe sitting right here that came out of my pocket. Generally speaking, when I teach people what to carry for fire, at the most basic level, what I tell them is, I say you should have 3 combustion devices. You should have a cigarette lighter, preferably a Bic, because you can make that thing work almost no matter what. You should have some type of ferrocerium rod. In my case, I teach basic students, and again, that's the difference between skill levels. The bigger that thing is, the better off you are. At least 3/8 by 6 inches, because the key element to that is how much material can I rake off that rod that's going to be molten, burning metal when it hits my tinder. And the bigger the rod, the more surface area you have, and the more time you have striking across that surface area, the more sparks you can get. So as your skill level gets better, you can obviously drop that weight down to a smaller rod. And then I tell them you should have some type of a magnification device, whether that's the one on your compass or whether that's some kind of Fresnel lens you carry. But those 3 things should get you through pretty well. Matches would be an added thing for me. They wouldn't be a primary, they'd be added. The primary would be those 3, because I'm always going to have open flame with the lighter. I have conservation of resources with the ferrocerium rod, and as long as the sun's out, I'm never going to run out of magnifying glass. So those three things are what I tell people to always carry. Now, along with that, we tell people you should have some type of highly combustible tinder in your bag all the time. Back to your point of Mini Inferno, which is something that you can, the most expendable resource you have is that cigarette lighter or a match. Once it's lit, the match is gone. A cigarette lighter, every second you hold the button down is expending the fluid that can't be replaced. So something that you can light that will immediately flame up and hold a flame for 5 to 7 minutes, especially if you have marginal tinder, lazily collected tinder, I'll call it, or damp tinder, things like that. You need that longevity of flame to get that stuff going. So I always tell people to carry either Fatwood or Mini Inferno or any other device they choose, whatever it is, Blackbeard or Tinder Quicks, whatever they choose. I don't try to beat people up to carry a certain thing. I just tell them that you should have something.
I do. I'm not. Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you. Some of them suck, and you're being nicer than I. Yeah, I just went off the deep end on and I had trioxane tablets, yours, and what you can make. When you, and I just want to put this in good context, a lot of the fire, well, when I say fire, not Bix, but like, when you look at buying fire starting kits, a lot of the ones on the market suck. And in my opinion, if you smell them and they don't have a scent of petroleum product, you should not bring them, in my opinion. Now, you may argue.
I would agree with that. That's one of the things that we talk about at the school and at the very basic level. One of the things that most people grow up around hearing, it's almost like the whistle thing, but that's a different story. But people grow up hearing cotton balls, Vaseline, cotton balls, Vaseline. The problem with that is Vaseline is a fuel. It's not an accelerant.
You have to have it. I'm going to go off the deep end, but you have to have an accelerant, in my opinion. When the rubber meets the road, you're fucking freezing to death. It's snowing. Petroleum and cotton is not something I promote ever. I don't want to get yelled at, but I have gotten some hate mail. I've used it for years, and I'm like, well, you've never built a fire in a bad condition, because you have to have an accelerant when you can't feel your fingers and shit has hit the fan. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, the thing with Vaseline cotton balls is, what people don't understand about it is, it relies on the cotton burning to light the Vaseline.
Yep.
It's the difference between diesel fuel and gasoline.
Now, if you put diesel in if you put diesel in the Vaseline and then put it in cotton balls or lighter fluid, different story. But Vaseline on its own is not something I promote.
No, what I'm saying is it's the difference between, when you're talking about accelerants, it's the difference between diesel fuel or kerosene and gasoline. Okay, if you took K1 kerosene, diesel fuel, whatever you want to call it, and you stick it in a bucket and you throw a match at it, the match will go out when it hits it. If you do that with gasoline, you're going to die. Yeah,
and I think I misspoke there, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Yep. Is you want?
There's just no accelerant value in diesel fuel.
Yeah, I think I said diesel. You want an accelerant in anything that you have.
Lighter fluid, something like that. That's what you want, for sure. No question. I agree. If you smell it and it doesn't smell like lighter fluid or something, it's not gonna do what you want it to do. It's just not.
So, I mean, obviously a Bic lighter is simple, that everybody should have one of those. On the ferro rod side, I do want to touch on that. I personally like the softer ferro rods personally.
Agreed 100%.
Okay, yeah, because I've got a ton of them. I fuck around with them in practice or whatever. I want to be able to get a Inferno every time that I,
it's the entire reason for having a ferro rod.
Yeah, and I have, when we teach it, and I see you see it, guys are whacking away at it, and it's knocking the, their little nest down or whatever else. But like when you hit that thing, I don't give a shit if it doesn't last 10,000 strikes. I just want to not die. So maybe
it's a $25 life insurance policy. Who gives a shit if it only lasted 4 days?
Well, and when I say that, I've used one a lot, and even the softer ones last longer than most humans are going to use unless they're teaching.
Oh, there's no question. As long as you don't throw it in the fire, there's no question about that.
So which one, and do you offer that on your website, and which one do you offer?
We do. And I went through a lot of ferrocerium rods to get what we have now. And here's what I found, I'll tell you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have Mike send you one. Send me your address when we get done with this. I'm going to have Mike send you one of our ferro rods. So I went through 3 or 4 or 5 different factories sending me ferro rods before I found the one that I wanted. And then once I found the ferro rod I wanted, the second key element to that is the striker itself, right? If you can use the spine of a saw, like a silky saw, works great. You can use a 90-degree spine on a knife if you got a good hard knife, it works great. You can use a piece of broken glass and it will work. But what you really want is something that's so freaking hard and so sharp that when you scrape that rod with it, it basically just wrecks that rod. And what does that is tungsten. Not those cheap shitting piece of crap razor saw blade striker bullshit that you get on most rods. You need a piece of tungsten steel. That thing will throw ungodly amounts of sparks with very little effort at all.
So I don't know if I've been promoting the correct one because I'm not into this as much as you, and I'll dive into that with you later. But I agree. There is 2 specific strikers that I promote for people to have, that even if you have a Leatherman Surge and the little 1/8 ferro rod on the back of that thing, or the striker, to me, makes or breaks the deal in a lot of ways.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
Certainly, and I've proven, when I say proven, but I will hand 10 students, and I'll take 5 of them, and I'll hand 5 one type of striker and the other 5 another type, and you can see 5 of them are going to be struggling. So you, with what you offer, you dove down in the weeds with it and offer your version of the best, or what you feel is the best ferro rod, but more importantly, the best striker.
Absolutely. And they're connected together. You buy them, you get them both. So they're connected together by a tether. So you get a tungsten steel striker that's got a nice big grip on it. You can grab with your fingers, and it's a tungsten steel striker, and it's a soft rod that throws molten lava. I mean, what I tell people is the test for any ferro rod and striker combination, because really, like you said, and I agree with you 100%, the striker makes or breaks the deal. You can have a great ferro rod. If you have a shitty striker, it doesn't matter. So the litmus test really for anybody, and so I tell my students is, stand up and strike that ferro rod. If there's not sparks burning on the ground after you strike it, it's shit.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I'm not going to mention companies, but there's a couple companies that offer ferro rods that have done very well over the years, that is an extremely hard ferro rod. And then they offer what I consider a shit striker, which you talked about a minute ago. And if you want to mention them, go ahead, but I don't want to shit on anyone's.
No, I'm not going to do that either, man. I don't like bashing companies, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I mean, I'll hand it. I mean, you can tell I'll hand it to a student, and when we're doing the fire building portion, and I'll take it from them and hand them the other one like you offer, because you and I, it sounds like you use the same thing. It is night and day different, both the
Absolutely.
striker and the ferro rod. Your website, I want to make sure people know where to go. Your website, again, is where people can grab these things.
self-relianceoutfitters.com.
Okay, and you said it's a kit. They get the striker and
you just type in ferrocerium rod, and it will come up a 6-inch 3/8 ferro rod, and the striker comes with it.
Okay, cool. We're already at 42 minutes, and I can see this podcast could go 4 hours, so I'm going to move on. All right, so the next one of the C's is cover, and that's pretty basic, obviously, when I say basic, but talk about cover, and then I'll kind of dive in after that.
Right. Well, we kind of dove into that in the very beginning. We talked about, proper shelter elements. But for me, when I teach shelter in general, what I tell people is there's 3 critical elements to every shelter. Something to sleep on, something to sleep in, and something to sleep under, right? So the on battles your conduction. Something to sleep in is what insulates your core temperature and provides insulation in the loft. And then something you sleep under is what protects you from the exterior elements like wind, rain, and snow. So without those three elements, you don't have a proper shelter. And it's no different than you have in your house, right? You have something to sleep on, you have a bed. You have something to sleep under, you sleep under covers. And you have a roof over your head. So you have in, on, under in your house, and that's what you need in the woods. It's no different.
So with cover, like a lot of backpack hunters, when you look at cover, you have a tent, whatever that type of tent is, or you have a tarp,
sure.
Depending upon what, the conditions and everything else. So you have single wall shelters, dual wall shelters, 3-season, 4-season, and then you also have bivy sacks and survival blankets. Now I am, which you would probably, smack me in the back of the head. I do not hardly ever bring a survival blanket. I just don't bring them.
Neither one of those will keep you alive if you're laying directly on frozen ground.
So for me on the backpack hunting side, I am much more worried about, I want to have a puffy jacket. I want to have rain gear. I want to have the knowledge to build a shelter. I want to have the knowledge to get good bedding and loft, like we talked about, the RE factor. But with I used to carry the kind of the Mylar, whatever they cost. They're not
the origami thing.
Yeah, I just don't fucking like them. Yeah, I just don't bring them. I haven't brought them for years. I think you're far better off with different options. But I want to hear, we talked about it, but I want to hear your views on that a little bit more.
Here's what I would tell you. I would say this. If you are, and this is the same thing I tell my students, if you are intentionally camping, which you're talking about, right? You're going hunting, you're intentionally camping. And you bring the highest quality gear your wallet can afford, and you make sure that you have proper cover elements that provide in, on, under, insulation, loft, all that kind of stuff, just like we've been talking about. If you're not planning to camp, I'm going to go for a 12K loop in the Daniel Boone National Forest today, and I'll be back tonight, hon. Well, you better have a couple things in that backpack, like an emergency space blanket that you can use as a tarp, but you can also use it reflectively. And I say reflectively because it is Mylar and it is shiny, with the fire to bounce radiant heat back to your body and trap radiant heat from your body that's escaping. So there are a time and a place for those blankets. They're also orange on one side, most of them, reusable or not. So they are a signal panel. They're a 5-foot by 7-foot signal panel that you can put on the ground if needs be. So it's a piece of emergency gear. It's not something that I would necessarily take if I were planning to go camping either, because I'm going to have the good shit. But if I'm just going out hiking for the day and I want to make sure that if something goes south, I have something that can keep me alive. The space blanket is versatile enough, especially a reusable one, not one of the origami shit and things you're talking about, but a reusable space blanket is functional enough that it's good for a shelter. It's good to wrap around you. It's good to bounce heat from a fire. It's good for signaling for rescue. It's good for a lot of multifunctional tasks, and it's worth carrying at that point. Now, even in your case, honestly, just my opinion, even in your case, I don't think it's a horrible idea to carry one of those origami shit and things that's the size of a credit card. Because, again, it's a 5-foot by 7-foot signaling panel, if for some reason you had to have it. But it also can be at least an emergency device to trap radiant heat from a fire if you absolutely need to do it. God forbid you fell in a river or some shit like that. You crawl out and make a fire. You can at least wrap that thing around you and reflect the fire's heat to your core.
And I don't disagree. The only thing I would add context to is if your knowledge base is high, you may turn into me and say, fuck it. And when I say that, that's why I don't bring it. I'm going to use.
Dude, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, everybody has to make their own choices on what they do. And of course, like we said before, the more you know, generally, the less you tend to carry. And so, things that you think are superfluous are generally the first things that you do without. And really, if you look at statistics of people who have to be rescued or die before they get rescued and they're found dead, it's not because they didn't have an emergency space blanket. It's not because they couldn't start a fucking bow drill fire. It's because they didn't have a compass, they didn't have a PLB, and they couldn't navigate.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that 100%. The one thing, and I'm going to squirrel here for a minute, did you watch the Jason Bourne movie with the one that didn't have Matt Damon in it?
I'm terrible at movies, man, so probably not.
Anyway, in the movie, it starts out, he's in a river, he's on some kind of a special forces course, he dives to the bottom, grabs his beacon, heads up, and he's got fire and a wall behind him, a rock wall, and he is naked, and he has a Mylar blanket, and he basically traps that heat with the wall, the Mylar blanket, and it was one of the few times where a movie was like, I was like, okay, they actually had someone like you as a liaison to not look stupid, right? You know what I mean? Because what you said,
I know I do.
Yeah, I mean, because I see shit all the time, and I'm like, oh my God, that's not, that's not how it works. But I will say, if you strip down naked and have a bonfire going and have a Mylar blanket wrapped around you, you will be much happier than if you're just standing by the fire.
There's no question.
Over my years of experience, I've just not had to do that. And so, again, I don't bring one. But I think that the cover portion of this, I am not disputing. Like, cover is extremely important. But you touched on that. Like, if you have the best shit for cover when you go in, it's totally, there's different levels. Like, a lot of guys will bring in, whatever, a Hilleberg shelter, and they will also have that, like you said, origami Mylar blanket. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that as your knowledge base builds, you may opt to not bring that with you.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, really, when you think about it, it's an emergency blanket for someone who doesn't have what they're supposed to have. Right? That's what it's really for. It's for a minimal type thing. So, like I said, if you're going on a day hike and you're not planning to camp, you better have that shit. If you're planning to camp and you've got the greatest freaking shelter system on the planet, you probably don't have much need for it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Okay, so moving on now, container. And this is one will be interesting because there's a huge difference between backpack hunters, hikers, and, survivalist bushcrafters. Your view on container, but I go ahead and I'll dive in after this.
My view on containers is I want at least, and here's what I would budge a little bit on this for somebody like you and say, you better at least have a metal freaking cup, right? If you're going to carry a Grail, because that's an easy way to disinfect your water, as long as you don't let it freeze, then you better have a metal cup with it too, because you can put that in the fire if you absolutely have to. But generally speaking, what I tell people is, minimum of 2 metal water bottles in a cup. And a lot of that comes down to, again, back to that emergency gear scenario, not an everyday deal, right? If I'm planning to camp, I'm probably going to have a canteen, cup, and a skillet. So, but if I'm just going hiking for the day, the best bet is to take 2 water bottles in a cup. So what you carry, could be a far cry from that.
Well, no, I mean, and I think adding, it's different. But so when you look at backpack hunting, we already talked about the weight thing and everything else. A lot of guys use bladders, and the big downs. Yeah, just there. There's a company, Drifter Hydration, that makes a hard-sided bladder. But like with bladders, there's a lot of negative sides to them. They are very one-dimensional. They are not the most durable and bomb-proof. I generally bring a bladder in my pack, not to drink out of, but that's my camp water. And meaning I roll it up when I go in and hike in. I go to the lake, I fill up. I've got 6 liters of water, and it's hanging there, and I can fill up my, whatever.
There's nothing wrong with that. I've got one in my. You said 6 liters. Probably the same thing I've got. I've got an MSR water bladder,
dromedary,
the big heavy duty black one.
Yep.
The backcountry water bladder. I've got one of them in my side by side all the time, and for exactly that reason. Camp water.
And then you have, like, most hunters are going to use a Nalgene, and for the most part, they're going to get away with that without any issue, without doing anything extreme. Where you run into problems with a Nalgene, you cannot boil water. Well, you take it from there. What's wrong with the Nalgene? Why should they use metal or titanium?
Well, I mean, you could boil water in it once
Yeah, I was going to say, man, you fuck around and grow a third leg. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's probably going to be shit. But I think the biggest problem with the Nalgene in the true sense of it is, number one, that you can't put it in the fire. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do with a metal water bottle. It's a sound chamber you can bang on the back of to signal for rescue. It's an irrigation device, which you can do that with a Nalgene, but it's also a hot pack that you can't do with the Nalgene unless you heat the water with something else. It's a cold pack, which you could do with the Nalgene, although it's not going to hold the temperature near as well as a stainless steel bottle is. And the other side of the coin is with a metal water bottle is it's a lot less likely to crack or break if you drop it, if you freeze it, if you God forbid it falls out of your pack and drops down a freaking rock scree 50 yards away, it's probably not going to be destroyed. Where in cold weather, especially, a Nalgene probably is going to break. And now you're containerless. So I think that a metal water bottle has a lot of advantages. Do I think you can get away with a Nalgene bottle most of the time? In my mind, if you had a metal cup, you probably could. But for me, I'm just a stickler with the metal water bottle.
No, I'm glad we're talking about this because, like, it's a different world. The backpack hunting. I have either some kind of a titanium cook set that I use, or I use an MSR reactor quite a bit, where I can put that in the fire. I can boil water with that. I can, whatever. The thing, absolutely, when you start talking about weight, for backpack hunting. Stainless steel is, I wouldn't say heavy, but you can get some pretty lightweight stainless steel cups, but there's a lot of options on titanium side as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you don't, until you, I say, touch the stove, right? Until you burnt your hand, meaning until you have gotten in deep shit, you've run out of isobutane, and you're kind of fucked. That's when you're like, this Nalgene sucks, right? And generally, right. That doesn't happen very often. But when it does, it is nice because you can literally, build a fire. And a lot of people don't do this, but like you've run out of aqua tabs, your purification system sucks. It's plugged up because silt plugs up pumps, whatever else.
Or you froze it.
Yeah, or you froze it. And with those, a lot of guys use those Sawyer squeeze filters. I am not a fan of those. When the holoco fibers fill, they're fucked. You build a fire, you're warming up, you put your water bottle there, it boils, you drink the water, you're good. Talk about that a little bit more to put perspective for people listening in, because you can get, they're a little more expensive, but there is some, and you probably sell them, there's some badass containers that are metal that are actually as light or lighter than a Nalgene at times.
Yeah, there are, and I used to sell them. I used to sell a lot of titanium, and I'm not a disgruntled person when it comes to titanium. I don't personally like it, not because it's not lightweight, not because it's not great for ultralight stuff. I have seen it warp in the fire.
Yep, that'll happen.
Especially if you let something, drain away while you're out collecting firewood, and now all of a sudden it's on, in deep shit fire with nothing in it. I have seen them warp way more than stainless steel. Titanium is expensive. It's just, to me, and the weight difference, truly speaking, I used to sell a titanium water bottle, and the difference between the titanium water bottle and my stainless steel water bottle was less than an ounce.
That's good to know, because I don't have that info.
To me, that's non-negotiable. I mean, that's just dumb. If it's that kind of weight you're talking about, then who cares? Now, that's because most of those titanium water bottles have a metal cap on them, and that's where most of your weight's at. If you didn't have that metal cap on it, you wouldn't have much weight, probably. So I will caveat that right now with context. The weight is in the cap, not the bottle. And I do like titanium cookware. There's nothing wrong with it. And I do agree with you that you can always boil water in your titanium pot. You can always, but what I'm talking about when I'm talking to people about carrying emergency gear is you're not carrying a titanium. You're not carrying a pot. You're carrying 2 water bottles on a cup. That's it. If you're camping, that's a different ballgame. If I'm camping, I probably got a skillet. I can boil water in a skillet. I probably got a small bush pot. I can boil water in that. In which case, I might have a plastic canteen with a filter in it, like an alpha filter, and a metal cup. and I'm okay. I got 3 metal containers I can use to boil water if I have to, and I got a plastic canteen that cuts some of the weight. There's nothing wrong with that. But from an emergency standpoint of kit, again, going out hiking for the day, 12-mile loop, 20-mile loop, whatever you're going to do, having emergency kit on you that can do multifunctional things very, very well. And again, stainless steel is a lot louder when you're banging on it than titanium is.
Yeah,
as far as the sound.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But anyway, it's just, again, it's personal preference. There's nothing right or wrong. And I think for what you guys do, and I've played the ultralight game a few times and see, how little shit I can carry in my pack and how much weight I can get away with not having. And I don't disagree that titanium can remove a lot of weight. But I think when you're talking about the difference between, 8 ounces of water, which is already going to have X amount of weight to, or 32 ounces of water, which is already going to have 2 pounds of weight to it anyway. Whether you add 16 ounces more weight to that or 7 ounces doesn't really make that much difference.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. Now, I do you offer a cylindrical stainless steel water bottle or more the canteen size? Or
No, both. Both. Our stainless steel 32-ounce water bottle and cup was the very first thing we ever developed. And I'll tell you something that not a lot of people know. Okay, so when I developed that stainless steel water bottle and cup, there was only one other stainless steel water bottle on the market, and that was the Gaia design. You ever heard of them?
Oh, man, I don't think I have.
Okay, it was 2008. It was Nalgene owns it now. The bottle that Nalgene makes, this metal, that's Gaia Design's bottle. Nalgene bought it.
Okay, gotcha.
That thing is twice the thickness of my bottle, so it's twice as heavy, number one. But to my point, when that bottle first came out from Gaia Design, there was no cup that fit it anywhere on the market. There was cups that would fit Nalgene's. You could buy a cup somewhere along the line that would fit it, but it didn't come with a cup. That's my point to it. It didn't come with a cup. You had to find a cup somewhere else that would fit. So I'm like, well, that's stupid. Why is anybody selling a bottle and cup that are metal that go together, that nest inside of each other, made together, that sell together? So I was the first one who ever did that.
Yeah, no, and I kind of teed you up with the softball there because I actually already own all your shit. And I would say anybody, yeah, I'm being totally honest. I was going to say, I thought I saw one of my water bottles in one of your shots. No, I've got them all. I would say anybody that's listening in that I have gradually moved over your cap is plastic or whatever, whatever, it's not metal, but you don't need the cap metal. When I put it in a fire, I'm not going to have the lid on it. Why would I have the lid on it? 2, I can see when it's boiling. 3, it makes no sense. So, I would really, I have no issue with Nalgene's. I take them to the gym. It saves the world, right? I'm not a left-wing liberal, but I feel the fucker up.
Nalgene bottles too, man.
Yeah, but heading into the field, I agree with you because I've weighed them out. You're looking at about an ounce difference. With the metal water bottle, the stainless steel water bottle is much more timeless. It's going to last forever. It's like a very heavy wool jacket. It's like a heavy wool hoodie. It's going to last much longer. Where Nalgene's not so much, and they're not as cool. And when I say that, there's a lot of the cool factor is huge, right? It is, like backpack hunters they use Nalgene's a lot, but that metal, the water bottle that you offer, I definitely suggest for everybody to take a look at. Now, I have your canteen kind of bushcraft setup. I don't use that very often. It's just it's because for what I do, it's not needed. Now, when I say that, I have one and I keep it in my truck. And people are like, why do you have that? And I'm like, look, I'm not always going to have, I'm a big fan of multi-fuel stoves. I'm not always going to have one of those. All you got to do is throw some sticks under the kit. You put the water bottle on top. It takes a little while, but it will boil and you're good. The thing is, most people aren't going to do that, where the water bottle, you use that every day. And it's only 1 ounce difference. So, all right, we're in an hour.
And the other thing about that bottle is that a lot of people don't know is when I designed that bottle, I made sure that it was 32 ounces to the rim.
Oh, gotcha.
Because every disinfectant out there is measured in 32 ounces.
32 ounces, yeah. MSR Aqua tabs, everything is 32 ounces.
So how do you know you got enough? How do you know if you got a 16-ounce bottle, a 38-ounce bottle, how do you know you got enough? You know what I mean? 32 ounces is a no-brainer. Here you go. Yeah. So many drops, so many tabs, done deal.
Now, I know you're out of stock of those because I tried to order some for Christmas presents the other day. When are you going to be back in stock on those?
The water bottles?
Yeah, you're the stainless steel. I would say that the big one, not the 32, the 64 ounce.
Oh, the 64.
Yeah,
it might be out of stock. You might be right. The 64, man, that cup that comes with that thing is probably one of my favorite pieces of kit. The 64 ounce cup that you can get with, or the 40 ounce cup that you can get with that bottle. That thing is like the perfect coffee pot. And actually, the 26 ounce cup and the 32 ounce bottle will nest inside of it. Anyway, I digress. I don't know when it's going to be back in stock, but I would say it's going to be probably March.
Gotcha.
It takes a little while to get that stuff.
Cool. Oh yeah, no, I get it for sure. Okay, so we're at an hour. Let's move on. Cordage. And every backpack hunter brings some type of P cord. Bank line is not. I'm a huge fan of bank line. Not that many backpacker, they'll get sometimes like the 2.3 millimeter, whatever guy out, like mountaineering line or whatever else.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but guy line stuff.
Yeah, yep. But cordage is huge. So let's talk about how much, what type, why, all that.
Okay, so for me, what I tell people is this: paracord should be your non-expendable cordage. Paracord should be the stuff that you're going to use it and you're going to recover it every single time, and you're not going to tie knots in it that don't come undone really, really easily, no matter how much stress they're under, right? So ball lines, for example, things like that. So you want to make sure that you understand your knots, going back to that. And then we use a cordage management system, which I won't get into that because it's detailed, but we break down that 100-foot roll of paracord into manageable sizes so that if you grab it in the dark, you know exactly what it is, and you only need it for certain things. And then to the bank line, which is the second line we tell people to carry, that is your expendable cordage. That's I'm going to tie a quick tripod and chuck in the fire. I'm going to lash these two sticks together for something to prop this up, and then I'm going to throw it in the fire. Or I'm going to tie the shelter together really quick, and tomorrow I'm going to tear it down, so I'm going to throw stuff in the fire. That's your expendable cordage, because you can carry lots of it in a very small roll. It's very strong. It's about 320-pound test, so it's very close to paracord. And you can break it down into single plies of almost 100-pound test if you needed to. So it's just a great cordage. And then I go back to the threes, because I always tell people to carry about 3 of everything. What we do at the basic level, we stop at the 2. In the next level of training, I tell people to carry 30 feet of 1-inch webbing, because with that, you can make a harness. With that, you can use that for backpack straps. If you had to make something, let's just say, I'm sure you carry the right shit, okay, but let's say you carry the wrong shit, and you backpack in and you kill something you got to carry out, right? You put the pack on the front, you build a pack frame on the back, and you got straps for that pack frame to carry out whatever you got to carry out as far as meat goes, because you couldn't put it on your backpack because you had the wrong one. But whatever. So that and it's also weight rated, so it's rescue rated stuff. That 1-inch tubular webbing can be used for rescue. So if you get yourself in a jam and you've got to get out and somebody's got rope, you have a harness. Same thing with swiftwater rescue, you have a harness. So it's very multifunctional. You can use it for a lot of stuff. And that's the third thing I tell people to carry is about 30 feet of tubular webbing cut into two 15-foot sections.
Okay, so I want to make not many people talk about the bank line real quick, because there's multiple different sizes. You said, I think you mentioned 300 pounds. I think I get them confused. Number 36 bank line. I want to talk about real quick the pros and cons of P cord compared to bank line, because there is very, very good things about bank line, and there's other things that are kind of a pain in the ass. So I want to hear your thoughts on P cord compared to number 36 bank line, not the small stuff, because the small stuff is not useless, but it's very specific to what you need it for. But 36 bank line. Yeah,
we use that stuff for making nets and things like that.
Yeah.
So to me, the advantage of the bank line is over paracord is, I'm sure, And I'm sure that you and all your buddies have had to fuck with the guts of paracord. And the guts of paracord suck for most things compared to bank line.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
Bank line has a huge advantage because anything that you need smaller diameter cordage for, quick tie lash and bind, you don't want to ruin your paracord for, bank line does that. The pain in the ass with bank line really is that it is kind of self-binding stuff. You put knots in that stuff, if you don't tie the right coming out here. The other pain in the butt about it is it will burn your hands quickly if you have something on the end of it you're trying to hold on to.
Yeah, so
it will definitely burn your hands very quickly.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to dive into this. If you tie even a bowline knot with P cord with enough tension, even a bowline can be difficult to take out. And then, as Dave had mentioned, if you're trying to pull up an 80-pound, 60-pound game bag and lose it up with bank line and it burns down your hand, you're not going to be very happy. But I still carry bank line with me. It has a purpose. I'm a big fan. It
absolutely does. I carry it every day. It's my expendable cordage. If I were going to do something like you're talking about, I got to bring up some game or something like that, pull a backpack up from somebody, I'm going to use paracord for that. It's just the paracord stretches more than bank line does, which is kind of another one of the downfalls of paracord a little bit, is the stretch of it. But at the same time, the combination of bank line on paracord is huge when you're talking about things like prussics, because you have a Kermantle line and a non-Kermantle line that's a smaller diameter that bites into the Kermantle.
Yeah, and man, we're gonna have to dive into those. We're gonna be on this podcast forever. We may do a knot tying podcast. I just did a few videos on the. I didn't do the prusik. I did the taut line hitch, the bow line, and something else. But it is very important, though. One, those knots, but the cordage you bring, the specific uses for those, which we're talking about. But P cord, how much do you bring? How much P cord would you suggest for people to have?
I bring 100 feet. So what I do with my paracord, like I said, I use what I call a cordage management system. So I take 100-foot paracord and I immediately cut it up. And I only cut it into 2 different lengths. I cut one piece that's 30 feet long, and that is going to be ridgeline material. Right, that's going to be for putting up a tarp, putting up a shelter, putting up a clothesline, hanging a bear bag, something I'm going to need a long piece of cordage for. That's for. And then I'm going to cut 10 pieces that are 6 feet long. 10 to 11, depending on, 100 feet of paracord is not always 100 feet of paracord. So I'm going to try to cut 11, but if I can only get 10, I'm going to cut 10. And those 10 6-foot pieces, 4 of them are shelter guy lines. 4 of them are extensions for guy lines. 1 of them goes in my pocket all the time, and 1 of them goes in the top of my pack. And so wherever I grab a piece of cordage from, you only got 2 sizes, either 6 foot or 30 foot, and it's easy to tell the difference. And every one of them has one thing in common. They have a bowline in one end and a double overhand stop knot in the other end.
So why do they have, and I know why, but why do they have bowline one end, stop knot on the other?
Well, they have a bowline in one end so you can do loop-to-loop connections or non-loop-to-loop connections that connect 2 pieces of rope very quickly to extend the 6-footers and the 12-footers, or extend your 30-foot line to longer if your trees are farther apart than you thought they were. And they have a stop knot that from coming undone. If I tie a slippery half hitch in something and I pull it through, now I have a knot. If I have a stop knot, I can't pull it through. It also gives me something to grab onto. And let's not go too deep in the weeds on this because I know that's another subject altogether. But, the fact that it has a loop on one end makes it really quick to go around the limb if I needed to, if I have nothing else, and snatch it down.
Yeah, no, 100%. So with the cordage, for any backpack hunter listening in, the P cord is the number one generally for hoisting up game bags. That's the big one. But I would encourage, because a lot of backpack hunters haven't heard of bank line. it's not very expensive. You sell, what are the rolls of them? 100, 500 feet? What's the, what
yeah, there's 500 or 600 feet on 36 pound or 36 rolls in it. It's called a 1 pound roll. I think there's about 400 or 500 feet on there. They're about $20.
And yeah, I keep a roll in my truck, and people are like, why? And I'll give you a prime example today. I had 70 mile an hour winds. I had a tarp on my raft. For me, and Dave said it's expendable. I spun that motherfucker up like a spider web as fast as I could because the tarp was going to blow away, right? It was just, and I just zipped it over back and forth. And then I did kind of the Oklahoma boomer windlass kind of knot to get them all together. And then tomorrow I may save that, but I don't really give a shit if I save it. Yes, I might save it, but it was quick. It kept the tarp down. And the number one of the biggest things is when I threw my knot on that, which I kind of finished it off with a taut line hitch, it bites. And when I say it bites,
it bites.
It bites. Yeah, like sure. It ain't coming loose. And so it's something to think about, to have some with you, because it is handy to have, even if it's...
I will tell you 2 things I've done with bank line in my truck that one of them I know people wouldn't think about doing. So I tied a loose windshield wiper blade back to my windshield wiper with bank line.
Yeah, wouldn't have thought of that one, but yeah.
The next one, and I know you wouldn't think of this one. I got a flat tire because I ran over a nail, and I actually took my Leatherman, put about 5 pieces of number 36 bank line in the eye of the awl, shoved it in a hole, burnt it over, and yanked it out, aired it up with my pump, and drove it home.
You know, and if you've used bank line, that is not a bullshit story, because that 100% would work, and I wouldn't have thought of that, but that would definitely work with bank line, 100%.
Yeah, that stuff is so tarred and thick and heavy. You start combining multiple pieces of it, it will definitely plug a tire, no question. Oh, yeah. I know for a fact because I've done it.
Yeah, no, it
doesn't pull out. You've got to pull it out and cut it off. You know what I mean? You've got to double it in there and pull it out and cut it off, because it's not going to break. That stuff don't break. So it's not like the rubber plug you stuff in there and you pull the stem out and all of a sudden it breaks in half. It doesn't work that way with bank line. You got to pull it. You got to put it in there, pull it out, and cut it off with a knife. But then you got 10 strands in there. I think it was. I put 5 in there, I think. So I had 10 strands in there, and I just melted it with a lighter into a big blob of shit and aired it right up.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that would work. So, we talking about, you know, the cordage knots, which is a whole nother podcast, but what would you say the top 3 to 5 knots are that people should know?
Well, I'll tell you what we teach at the basic level, and that's what I tell people. This is your baseline of knots, and you can do 99% of everything you need to do with these knots, and then these will build on knots that we'll teach you in later classes. So we start off with just a half hitch. You go from the half hitch to a marlin spike hitch. You go from the marlin spike hitch to a bowline because of transitionary knots. And then you go to hang on a second. I'm breaking my own back here thinking about it. We go to the Prusik hitch, the double overhand stop knot, the single fisherman's knot for connecting 2 pieces of rope together. Double fisherman if it's under stress, single fisherman for everything else that can hurt anything. And then clove hitch. Oh, nope. That's the next class. Hang on a second. Give me a second here. You put me on the spot, and I got to think of it in my head. There's 10 knots that we teach at the basic level. Square knot is another one. So you got square knot, bowline, double overhand stop knot. You're killing me, Smalls. My brain's not working. I've been driving all day. My brain's not working very well.
Well, no, I'm going to dive in while you're thinking. So, like the number one
half hitch.
What's that again? Half hitch?
Slippery half hitch is one we teach. Yeah.
So,
and then
go ahead.
Slippery. Yeah. Never mind. I'm sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
No. You're good. I mean, you know, with when you Some people are picked last at Foursquare, and some people really have trouble with knots, and that's just life. Yep. I personally, I'm a big fan of the bowline. Like, I think everyone should know that knot, whether it's for recovery.
Absolutely.
That knot's huge. The taut line hitch and the prusik, and then whatever the hell the name of the taut line hitch where you run it the other way. What do they call that? Anyway, taut line hitch and prusik. Those are other ones. Square knot, I think, is pretty important. I don't use the alpine knot ever.
Alpine butterfly?
Yeah, the alpine butterfly.
We don't use those very often either. We use directional figure of eights more than we use alpine butterflies, but that's at the ropes and rigging level class anyway. And
the figure eight, like you talked about, those are important. The thing is I think that you can kind of learn these on YouTube. The biggest thing,
you can, for sure.
What you're not going to learn on YouTube is why. In my opinion.
Exactly.
And
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Why to use those knots and where to use them is very, very important. I agree with that.
Like, you look at a whatever Marlin spike hitch or whatever, it's not that difficult to tie, but when you learn the why, it can be more difficult, or understanding when you might need to use that that hitch. So with those knots, how does that work at your school? You're not going to get cracked in the back of the head, but for you to pass, you have to tie all those knots to move on to the next course. I say on the next course, you get a patch or whatever else, but when that's taught, how is that taught? Is that low impact gentleman's course?
It is. The way we do it at the school is we teach an entire segment on knots and the actual setting up the cordage management system. And then we reinforce that by having them use that cordage and use those knots for building shelter over and over and over again. Because in the shelter, you're going to use the bowline, you're going to use the stop knot, you're going to use a slippery half hitch, you're going to use a slip knot that you're going to use for a trucker hitch or rope tackle, whatever you want to call it. You're going to use a prusik, and you're going to use a single fisherman to connect your prusik together. So 90% of the knots you're going to use every single time you build a shelter. And then the Marlin spike hitch is what we use for those, really. I have no misgivings about how good a taut line hitch is. It's not something I teach at the basic level, because what I tell people to do is, when they are tying out a shelter, to put a Marlin spike hitch in the line and pull it tight and drive it in.
Yeah, and that's just there's whatever 100 ways to skin it.
At that point.
Yeah, and that's where when you're adding, when you buy a good shelter, it does not have all the different guy outlines on every loop that you may need for high wind or snow load. And so when I teach people to add those, I do a bowline to the tab loop on the shelter, run it down to the stake, and when it loops back up, rather than adding the metal little toggle tensioner dealy, I teach a taut line hitch or a modified hitch. Yep, or a modified.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're going to, in your situation, especially where you're going to be dealing with different wind directions, snow lows, high winds. All those types of things. For us at the most basic level, when I'm just trying to say, get a shelter up and get it secure, you ain't going to sink as tight as I go and drive them in the ground. And that way you can't screw it up.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I never teach that knot, but that knot, you just said it is ball bearing proof. That is an Army knot, right? And it won't come undone, and you don't have to worry about it. You can fuck up your day real quick with an incorrect taut line hitch, because your shit will blow down. Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with that.
I think we've hit the 5 Cs, but one of the other ones, candle, we'll call that the 6C. And
you want to talk about headlights?
Headlamps. So I personally, that's
actually one of the top 10. That's one of the 10 Cs is candling device. It's just on the top 5.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to say 6, whatever, So I hate, and I say this, you might like them. I'm not a big fan of rechargeable headlamps. Mostly if you don't have a battery pack, you're fucked, but I want to hear your thoughts on that.
My thoughts on that are, twofold. Okay.
Hold on. I got to add context.
I'm not a fan of headlights that take R5217 BM3 batteries that I can't find any fucking place on the planet but Amazon, right? I want something I can find in every outhouse, shithouse, and in-house that there is on the planet, like a AA. But at the same time, I do think there's a place for rechargeable headlamps in the fact that 99% of people today don't go anywhere without an iPhone and a brick. And if you have a brick, and the charging cable is the same cable or the same connection for your phone and your headlight, chances are you got a way to charge it.
Yeah, and I just did a video on this. I personally, when I talked about the rechargeable headlamp for the vehicle, for base camp, for things like that, 100% agree. When you're doing a long distance backpacking trip where you're not going to have throughout the day in your day pack when you've left camp to go whatever, kill an animal, you can have AAA or AA batteries with you that you can swap out if you burn out at midnight and you're getting cliffed out, where you're not going to have a battery pack and have to wait. That's the biggest differentiator for me. And you just said it. I don't mind CR123 Surefire, whatever, flashlights, headlamps at the house. But you're not going to go, and you just said it, you're not going to 7-Eleven and buying those, right? You can buy AA's and AAA's, and that is something you really need to think about, because CR123s, I can order a bunch, leave them at the house, no problem. And like my really bright headlamps that I keep, or headlamps, flashlights I keep with CR123s. I would say, though, a AAA and a AA battery headlamp is probably, that is my suggestion.
Yeah, and one thing I teach at school, generally in a night exercise, is there's two things I tell people. Number one is you better know how to put them batteries in the dark.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. That is a fact.
And number two, you should, if you're carrying a headlight that has batteries and it has no, I won't turn on frickin' mode, turn one of the batteries backwards every time you're done using the headlight.
Yeah, it's funny you just said that, because I just did a video on this. The Black Diamond Storm is one of the headlamps that has the, hold the buttons down, it won't turn back on, because that will fuck you, because you may go 3 weeks and not need your headlamp, and the moment you needed it, it turned on, and
it was on the whole time.
And I'm a anal retentive. I've got stuck without a headlamp, and I do bring at least 1 to 2 sets of extra batteries, but it is like you said, turn around backwards, and very few people do that from my experience. Hardly anyone.
Yeah. It's just another one of those things that there's a lot of little things people don't think about that are good knowledge to have and good things to understand and remember and make a habit out of doing, that if you don't do it, it may not fuck you today, but the time it does will be the worst time ever.
Yeah. And I mean, when I say like touch the stove, you're probably only going to do that once, because when you've done it, it'll be at the worst time. You're cliffed out, you're tired, you're hungry, sleep deprivation, no water. And then, I'm going to turn my headlamp on. We're only a mile from camp, and fuck, you don't have a headlamp and it's dark because you're back.
Exactly.
So we got 6 C's, what 7th, 8th, and 9th, 10th?
So you got, the next one would be cotton material, and in your case, maybe not so important. In my case, what I tell people is, most people's cotton material idea is a bandana or a shamag. My idea of cotton material is a triple XL cotton t-shirt. That's orange.
So dive into this, because most backpack hunters can be like, what the fuck? But you can make char cloth, you can do it, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you can use that cotton t-shirt for 100 things, right? I mean, I did a huge video on this. I mean, you can use it for bandages, you can use it for splinting, you can use it for a sling, you can use it for making char cloth, you can wipe your ass, you can wash your face. It's an extra piece of clothing if you need something to sleep in that's dry. And at the same time, it's orange. So if you're screwed and you've hit the help me button on, I've fallen and I can't get up, you're a traffic cone if you put that thing on. So that's the big deal to me with the cotton t-shirt, is the usability of it for what room it takes up in your kit.
Yeah, and I'm going to add context to this because, anytime backpack hunting, cotton kills. You don't, when I say that in cold weather or extreme conditions, but I went through a survival school where one of the first things I did was a 4XL cotton t-shirt because I knew what I was about to be up against. And so with the items I could have, and then when I say that, a 4XL cotton t-shirt is something I am never, and I can say never with 30 years of experience, going to bring on a backpack hunt. But it is something I have in my truck kit at all times. And as simple as like straining water, right? You can use a cotton t-shirt for that.
Water. Yep.
Yeah, oh yeah, you can use it for all kinds of shit. And it's also, which is very important, it's fucking cheap. You're not going to wipe your ass with an $89 synthetic top. But a t-shirt, totally different. You're going to wipe your ass with that and not cry about it. Like, I had to wipe my ass with my socks once. Darn tough socks are fucking $39 a piece. A cotton t-shirt.
Exactly. I'm wearing a pair right now, I know.
Yeah, not a problem. So, again, in context, there's a big difference between your backpacking kit and your truck or survival kit bug out bag.
Absolutely. No question about that. I would agree with that 100%. So, but cotton material of some sort, is it generally a good idea to have? But again, like you said, the old saying is cotton kills, right? And what I always tell survival students is cotton kills stupid people that let it get wet and don't dry it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say there's some wisdom to that. The other thing with cotton, these are little things. If you go to wipe your lenses of your binos or glasses off with cotton, it works. It does not work worth a shit with synthetic or merino. And these are little things. Right. Not that big of a deal. But
and that could be a cotton bandana in your pocket, and you still got a piece of cotton, right?
Oh yeah, yep, 100%. And
or your bino bag or wherever it's at, but you've got that one piece of cotton in case you need it for something. So the next one would be a compass, right? And we've already talked about a cameling device. We've already talked about the cotton t-shirt. The next one would be a compass. And obviously we can beat that dead horse all freaking day long, but it's not enough to just have a base plate compass. That thing's got to have a mirror on it.
So
because
I want to hear.
Go ahead.
No, like get out. What are your top two favorite compasses that have a mirror?
Okay, man, oh man, you're gonna get me in trouble now, buddy.
I'll list mine and then you see if it's like yours. The Suunto MC2 and the Silver Ranger 2.0 are my two favorites.
Okay, I would have to agree with that 100%. And there's another company in there that's not in there because they need some work. They need some work, but I like the company, I like the owner, I love the people, but they need some work.
Who's
but
that?
I would agree with you. Ooh, let's not say names of companies.
Okay, all right.
Let's just say I can't believe you don't know who they are. Anyway, we can talk about it offline, not a problem.
All right,
but anyway, I agree with you 100%. Suunto is my number one go-to, and Silva my number two. And the only reason Silva is my number two, and I would never, ever knock product that's made in China, ever. I would never do that because everything is subject to the factories it's made in. There's just as much shit made in America as there is shit made in China. It just depends on what factory's making it and what the quality control is. But to the point of the compass, any silver that you buy in the U.S. is made in China.
Yep.
You can only buy silvers that are made in Europe if you buy it in Europe.
Gotcha. I did not know that.
That's part of the agreement when you, and the only reason I know that is because I sell silver compasses on my website, and we had to sign an agreement that we would never ship one overseas.
No shit. And I texted you
because
to see
they're all made in China, and they don't want those overseas. They don't want those getting in Europe.
I texted you to see if I had the right company, so take a look at that when you get a sec. So,
did you text me awesome? No, that's not you. Somebody else texted. Awesome.
So the MC2 compass, which is what it's a prerequisite.
You guys use the global? Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah, dude, they're here in my.
You use the global or the non-global?
They're here in my town. They're here. Yeah, so we'll talk about that offline. The Suunto MC2, that is what we recommend that everybody to our land nav courses. That's what they.
The global or non-global?
Non-global.
Okay.
But talk about that because most people are probably like, "What the fuck is global and non-global?" So go ahead.
I mean, I prefer the non-global myself in a lot of ways, only because it's just. There's a lot of reasons for it, but so the difference between a global compass and a non-global compass. unless you're a flat earther, is the fact that the needle always points to the magnetic pole, which incidentally, most people would think that the red side of the needle is the positive side and the black side is the negative side, and it's just the opposite, because the North Pole is a negative pole. I mean, it's a positive pole, so only negative will point to positive.
Yep.
Anyway, I digress again. So, the difference between global and non-global is how high the needle sits off the base plate. It's the size of the jewel underneath the needle. And so the global compass sits higher off the base plate than the non-global, so that it doesn't drag the closer you get to the equator or below the equator.
Which I, for where I'm at, is a moot point to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a moot point.
You'd almost have to be in Darwin for it to make a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're not traveling south of the equator, it's a moot point. You might as well just buy a non-global. The price difference is $20-$30 probably, if I remember right. And I think that the non-global is easier to use on my eyes than the global one is. The global is orange and white, and the non-global is black and red.
Yeah, yeah. And I've never, when I say I've seen the global enough to know I didn't need the global. And so that's why I go with the non-global. But what it does have, and what's very important, is the mirror. And you need, when I say the mirror, not just having it on there, but knowing why you would need to use the mirror other than to look at yourself because you're very, yeah.
Well, I mean, you might want to look at yourself just to make sure that the selfie you're going to take and put on Instagram is right. But the point of that thing is, I mean, the mirror gives you better accuracy, number one, right? Because it forces you to look through the gun sight and tilt the mirror to see the bezel ring while you're putting needle in the doghouse or whatever you're doing there. So the accuracy is better with the mirror. But the mirror in itself, hygiene, first aid, signaling, all of those things a mirror is good for. And you don't have to carry a separate one because you got one on the compass. So if you've got something on your ass you can't see, you got a mirror, right? Pretty simple stuff.
Signaling.
Hygiene-wise, cut your face. You cut your face, you bleed like a stuck hog, right? So without the mirror, you're bleeding to death. With the mirror, quit being a puss, right?
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
And the big thing that I promote, and this is getting flagged in or whatever, signaling. That mirror is huge for, 1,000, 1,600 meters away from somebody. You can use your cell phone to signal or whatever, but that mirror is huge for signaling as well.
No question about it. I would agree with that 100%. I mean, that really is, for me, that's not just a navigation device, it's a signaling device with built in. And so not having that is definitely, there's nobody allowed to come to my school that brings a compass out of their own. I mean, it's just a requirement, not only for the accuracy but also for the multifunctionality of it.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So all right, just because we're hitting an hour and a half. Oh, go ahead.
Yep, so that brings us down to the last one, right, which is kind of inconsequential for you probably as well, which is the canvas sail needle.
You'd be surprised. Go ahead.
Cargo tape. We forgot cargo tape.
Yeah, I was going to say there's two.
We forgot the 100-mile-an-hour tape. The good old 100-mile-an-hour tape. Again, for you, I don't know how much you use that stuff, but for me, a 1-inch roll comes in real freaking handy. Number one, it'll burn. It'll burn like freaking rocket fuel.
I tape the base of my, believe it or not, which I shouldn't, the base of my ferro rod. I have that on there. I have it everywhere. And I have it on my lighter. I have it on my ferro rod. I do the same thing. Buddy cuts a finger, tape it up. I mean, exactly. It burns like it was damned, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would agree, so repair, fire, first aid, you name it, duct tape will do it. I mean, you can fix almost anything with duct tape. So carrying a 1-inch roll is kind of a no-brainer for me, no matter how much it weighs. A 1-inch roll doesn't weigh very much. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's always on the outside of my pack where I can get to it real quick. And then the last one is a canvas sail needle, which, again, in your case, probably inconsequential. For me, it gives you, number one, it gives you a first aid device that you don't have to worry about using your knife on something to pick out a splinter or pick out a freaking sticker or dig debris out of a cut that you just got a bunch of dirt in and shit. It gives you a metal toothpick, so you're not breaking sticks off in your teeth like a dumbass and suffering for that the rest of the time you're out there hunting, because it'll never break on you. So you got something to pick your teeth with at night after you get done eating that elk you shot. It gives you a way to repair your gear with that bank line we talked about earlier. If you break that down into single strands, you rip a big hole in your jacket or something, or even a boot, lose a sole on a boot, you can repair it with that sail needle and bank line. So it gives you repair. It gives you first aid. It will also, almost every needle on the planet is magnetized from the factory, from the process that makes needles. So if you are shit out of luck and your compass, you think your compass is just jacked up and you're too silly to know that it's probably working and you don't trust your compass, you can always float a needle in something and see if it at least points generally direction your compass is and realize that your compass is right.
No, I agree. And I don't talk about this a lot. Occasionally I do, as far as like the repair kit. Sutures will work. I have never had to suture someone, but I have used the sutures in my pack for a lot of gear repair. The needle that you're talking about, do you have that on your website? Do you sell those?
I do. They're number 14 sail needles. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because it's you can get. I mean, you can order shit on Amazon, but you might get the wrong shit. I think it is stupid not to carry something like that because it weighs nothing, and you can have 10 of them. I keep one, and I should talk about that in the hood of my quiver, of my bow. I keep one or two up there. Like, I have them all the time. And when I say that, the toothpick thing you brought up is funny because I use it a shitload for the toothpick, but repair, it is huge for repair. It's a big one for
absolutely.
So I think everybody
I keep mine in my match safe. Yeah, I put mine in my match safe usually where I put mine.
Yeah, no, I think everybody should have one of those. And along lines with that, you can order, or you can have, most bow hunters have serving material for their repair kit for their bow, but it will work just as well with that sail needle for repair. So I think, and I don't touch on that as much as I should. So do you teach everything we've talked about, you cover in your courses? And I want to talk about this before we get off a little bit more in depth. Your courses are leveled, right? So talk about the different levels, I guess.
So the survival series is really the most leveled thing. So at the basic level, you're going to learn basic knots, basic shelter building, basic fire starting techniques, ways that you can multifunctionally use the items that are in your survival kit and the items that we recommend you put in your survival kit. And then you can base it off of that from there. The intermediate level, you start to gain more knowledge of the landscape. My big thing with the basic classes, and we really never touched on this, but we talked about it a little bit with kit and things, and the more you know. But to me, I think at a basic level of knowledge, you should be relying 90% on what you're carrying to help you survive. The only thing you should have to worry about the landscape should be probably sticks to make fire. Everything else you should have. Once you get beyond that basic level and you're not relying so much on your kit, now you need to learn what trees do what this tree good for, what's that tree good for, a few edible medicinal plants, how to navigate more than just a straight line. At the basic level, the only thing we teach is straight line navigation. Can you walk a straight freaking line? Because if you take a back azimuth from where you walked away from the parking lot, or your car at the trailhead, and you can take a reverse azimuth and you can follow it to a linear object, you can avoid rescue 90% of the time if you're not injured somehow. Okay. So walking a straight line is the first, thing that we teach in navigation. At the intermediate level, you start to learn plotting grid coordinates and things like that. You start to learn terrain association, how to read a map and understand where you should be when you're at a certain marker or at a certain grid point, and understand pace counting, how to calculate pace counting, and how to estimate paces and increase or decrease paces depending on terrain. We teach you how to figure your pace count versus how many meters per pace you walk. And we make you do the math and all of that stuff by hand, as well as other things on the map, like understanding the colors on the map, the terrain features on the map, identifying all those things, and being able to read the map in general. And then you have more advanced fire starting techniques like bow drill fire at the intermediate level. And more complicated shelters, like shelters that are built out of debris, like debris huts, things like that. Once you get past that and you get to the advanced level, then you start to lose gear and you have to recreate that gear off the landscape. And you learn more navigation that's a little bit more intensive than at the intermediate, where now you're going to learn to navigate by stars. You're going to learn to navigate with the moon. You're going to learn solar navigation, shadow boards, shadow sticks, all that kind of stuff for telling time and direction. And once you get that time and direction are exactly the same thing in your head, and a compass is nothing more than a clock face, you've got half of a lick. But anyway, and then you also learn at the advanced level, as well as the navigation intensive, something that we didn't touch on in this conversation at all, that I think is very important for people to understand when it comes to map reading in general, is that you should be able to plot lat long on your map without question, because 99% of every device defaults to lat long. So if you send a pin to someone, or someone sends you a pin, or someone hits the oh shit button on their device and it comes to you in a message, it's going to be lat long. It's not going to be MGRS. If you can't plot that, you're not going to know where they're at.
And I will be the first to say I can do lat long, and I hate lat long. I don't teach lat long. I have everybody convert their shit immediately to UTM. But that UTM was created because people in the military are dumb, generally, and they need to make it ball bearing proof. And I would say UTM is much easier to deal with than lat long.
There's no question. MGRS is so much easier than lat long.
But for anybody listening, MGRS and UTM are basically, I mean, they're different, but they're same concept.
Correct. I agree with that. And the problem is that the rest of the world hasn't caught up with that yet. I mean, I guess the rest of the world doesn't dummy-proof things like the military does. Let's put it that way, because like a Garmin device, you can change the default, so it will give you MGRS, watches, in reach, all that kind of stuff. You can change the defaults in those, but things like iPhone, you can't. So if someone sends you a pin on an iPhone that's stuck somewhere, they turned their four-wheeler over on a logging road somewhere, and you don't know where they're at, and they send you a pin, that thing's coming up lat long.
Yeah, no, I mean, that can't be argued. That's 100% fact, because I have to have people show them how to take, their device and then go to UTM from lat long, because that's the default. That's the default language, basically, is what they're speaking is lat long. So, and
most people don't know that. Most people do not have any idea of that. And so when you tell them that, they're like, "What? Really? Are you kidding?" But then again, you've also got the fact that if you're at sea, that's going to be lat long. If you're being rescued by air, that's going to be lat long.
Yeah, and with lat long, so people don't even probably a lot of people listening in look at lat long, UTM, MGRS as different languages. Like one is English and one is Russian. And if you give me a lat long coordinate, I can convert, right? It's not a problem. But if your buddy's GPS is lat long and yours is UTM, and you give him the lat long coordinate to where your dead elk is, and your shit is on UTM, and you plug in lat long, you'll end up in fucking Djibouti. It is not even remotely close to the same. So it's different. So
you're right. Do you what? I'm sure you're using like OnX Hunt or something, aren't you?
Yeah, I use Spartan Forge more than OnX, but but OnX does allow you to go to UTM, and
I use Build GPS, but.
Well, and the thing is like most people, and we've promoted the shit out of obviously Pathfinder, but Born Primitive offers courses as well. And the thing is
and I think it's awesome that you're doing that, by the way. Well, I was going to tell you that.
No, I appreciate that. The thing is most people that have a Garmin Fenix 8 watch or a whatever, don't understand that if you are not speaking the same language, it is, as I just said, if you have 6 people in your group and none of you are on the same either lat long or UTM, it's really counterproductive to helping your buddy. You have to understand, one, what map datum is, what, all these different things. We'll go into that later, but you've got to understand not only just like, what that means, how to read it, and that everybody's on the same page, or you will get you're going to get people lost, right? That is just bottom line.
No, I think it's awesome that you're doing this Born Academy thing, because I think for what you do, you're actually taking a niche group of people that do what you do or want to do what you do, and you're teaching them the best way to do that. And I think that in itself is very smart, because the people that come to me aren't going to learn the things they're going to learn if they come to you. People that come to you aren't going to learn the things from you that they're going to learn from me. There's going to be some overlap, no question about that, both ways. But if they are, ultralight backpack hunters, yes, maybe they need to learn the basics as well. Maybe they need to go both places. But I would definitely say those people should come to you to learn that stuff, because you're out doing it every day.
Yeah, and I can tell you, maybe Kurt, but I'm not going to be teaching you how to build a bow drill fire. If that's just not my thing. I can do it. I think I even messaged you like videos or whatever when I was like practicing or whatever.
I think you did, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not my thing. And I'll be the first one to say I can build a fire with a ferro rod quick as shit. If you wanted me... One, the wood that you use is extremely important when you do a bow drill fire.
Absolutely.
How you build it. I mean, there's a lot to it. And so, I send people to your course all the time. And the thing is I'm not going to teach you that. Now, does that mean that you don't need to learn it? If you can learn how to build a bow drill fire, I fucking promise you will get a fire going with anything. So it's important to learn that. You may never build a bow drill fire in your life meaning that you have to, but what it does is it makes you better at everything else because you've learned that. And so it's important. I wouldn't want you to test me doing it at any time without some practice, because I don't practice that shit hardly ever. So that's why I push people to your school quite a bit, is, those reasons right there. So.
Right.
Well, man, we've been on an hour and 50, and I could probably talk to you for 4 hours, but I do really appreciate you, hopping on the podcast, as well as what you offer. You do a lot of great things for the community, man. So thank you very much.
But it was an honor for me to be here, man. Really. I mean, I follow you on Instagram. I said this the other day in a video. Some people think that they're so high and mighty that they can't be fans. I'm a fan. There's people that I like watching, and I like seeing your stuff, man. Every time I see you holding one of them big old freaking rainbows up, I'm like, shit, yeah, I want to go out and do that.
Yeah. I'm very blessed with where I live. So the other thing too, though, is with geographically, right? You should go to both courses anyway, because you're going to have trees that I don't have where you're at, and the same thing where I'm at. It's just different geographically from where I'm at to where you are. So
that's true, yeah.
And I mean, if you're going to spend $10,000 on a bunch of camo and a new bow and shit, you probably should save that money and use it on your brain for knowledge. And
no doubt, I agree with that 100%.
Oh, well, cool, man. Well, man, have a good Christmas. I appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait to get back on, man. It's been a pleasure.
Not a problem, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.